The last time Eleanor Grayson saw her daughter, Lily, the sky was the color of melting sherbet. Hazy pinks and oranges stretched across the horizon as the sun dipped behind rows of suburban houses. The warm evening air smelled of freshly cut grass and the sweet vanilla scent drifting from the neighborhood ice cream truck. It had been a perfect summer day, one of those long, golden afternoons where childhood seemed endless. Lily, just 5 years old, had been laughing as she ran barefoot through their front yard, her blonde curls bouncing in the humid breeze. She wore her favorite Hello Kitty nightgown, even though Eleanor had begged her to change into something cleaner. But Lily was stubborn, just like her father. "Pink is my lucky color," she had declared, twirling on the porch steps. Eleanor had chuckled, shaking her head. Fine. Just don't spill your ice cream on it." And then, like clockwork, the familiar jingle of Mr. Perry's ice cream truck echoed down the street. The truck was a neighborhood staple, a vintage white and pastel vehicle that had been around for decades. The same chip paint, the same cartoonish ice cream cone decoration on top. Every kid in Maplewood knew Mr. Perry, an old man with silver hair and a kind face, always handing out free sprinkles with every cone. Lily had squealed in excitement. Ice cream. Eleanor had fished a crumpled $5 bill from her pocket and handed it to her daughter. "All right, go ahead, but come straight back." Lily had nodded eagerly and darted toward the truck, her tiny feet slapping against the pavement. And that was the last time Eleanor ever saw her. The vanishing moments after Lily's disappearance were a blur. 1 second, she had been there, standing by the truck, clutching a strawberry ice cream cone, her face lit up with pure joy. The next, she was gone, vanished. No scream, no struggle, no sign of where she had gone. Eleanor had heard the ice cream truck drive off, its jingle fading into the distance. But she hadn't panicked right away. At first, she thought Lily was just dawdling, maybe chatting with a friend, licking the last bit of ice cream for her fingers. But when she called her name, nothing. Silence. Then came the terror. She ran down the street, calling Lily's name over and over, her voice rising in panic. Neighbors came out of their houses. Porch lights flicked on. Someone grabbed a flashlight. The police were called. But it was already too late. No one had seen her go. No witnesses. No clues. All that remained was a single dropped ice cream cone melting into the pavement. 6 years of darkness. For 6 years, Lily Grayson's face had been on every missing child poster in the state. Her blue eyes, her dimpled smile, the words, "last seen wearing a pink Hello Kitty nightgown." Eleanor had refused to give up hope, but her world had crumbled in the aftermath. Her husband, Daniel, had left just 2 years after Lily's disappearance. The grief had been too much. The police had questioned them both relentlessly, and when the case went cold, the weight of the unknown had destroyed their marriage. Now, Eleanor lived alone in the same house, surrounded by painful memories. Every night, she left the porch light on, just in case Lily somehow found her way home. And then, one summer evening, exactly 6 years after Lily had disappeared, Daniel called her. His voice was shaking. "You need to see this," he whispered. Eleanor's heart pounded. "See what?" There was a long pause. "Then I found the truck." For the abandoned ice cream truck Daniel had never stopped searching for Lily. Even after their divorce, even when everyone else told him to move on, he spent his free time chasing leads, driving to small towns, questioning anyone who might remember that old ice cream truck. It had vanished from their neighborhood the same night Lily disappeared. And now, after 6 years, he had finally found it, sitting abandoned in a field outside a rural town, rusting under the weight of time. Faded pastel pink and blue paint, deflated tires, chipped front grille. But there was no mistaking it. It was Mr. Perry's ice cream truck. Daniel had stumbled upon it by accident while driving down an old back road. Overgrown weeds snaked around its base. The once bright, big ice cream, lettering now barely legible. But the real horror came when he got closer. The truck's back doors were slightly open, just enough for him to see inside. Daniel had hesitated. Something in his gut told him not to look, but he had to. He pushed the doors open, and what he saw made his blood run cold. 5. The terrifying truth. Eleanor gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The old truck sat motionless in the moonlight, exactly where Daniel had told her it would be. She could see him standing beside it, his face pale, his hands trembling. Without a word, he pointed toward the open back doors. Eleanor swallowed hard and stepped forward, her pulse hammering in her ears. As she neared the truck, an eerie smell filled her nose. Stale air rust, something rotten beneath the sweetness of long-faded ice cream. She reached out with a shaking hand and gripped the door. Then she pulled it open, and what she saw inside made her scream. Eleanor's scream sliced through the still night air. Inside the ice cream truck, the walls were lined with drawings, dozens, no, hundreds of them, scrawled in childish, uneven crayon strokes. Some were simple, little stick figures holding hands, a smiling sun, a house with a crooked door. But others were disturbing. A figure standing alone, surrounded by dark shapes with hollow eyes. A little girl inside a cage, crying, a monstrous shape looming over a tiny bed. And, in the very center of it all, a drawing of a pink ice cream cone, melting. Eleanor staggered back, her breathing ragged. Her mind screamed at her that it wasn't real, that this was some kind of sick joke. But then she saw it. Tucked into the corner of the truck, beneath a pile of crumpled blankets, a small, faded Hello Kitty nightgown, the same one Lily had been wearing the night she disappeared. 6 years of shadows the moment Eleanor saw the nightgown, time fractured. For 6 years, she had imagined 1,000 different scenarios of what had happened to Lily, that she had wandered away and gotten lost, that she had been taken by someone kind, someone who had wanted a child of their own, that she had somehow survived. She had clung to those possibilities, even when they seemed impossible. But this was proof. Proof that Lily had been inside this truck. Proof that she had been alive. For how long? Eleanor didn't know. Her knees buckled, and she pressed a trembling hand against the truck's rusted frame. Daniel knelt beside her, his face pale, his eyes locked onto the drawings. "We need to call the police," he whispered. Eleanor barely heard him. She was staring at the largest drawing of all, scrawled across the back wall of the truck. For words, written in shaky red crayon. "I want to go home." 8. The ice cream man the police had searched for Mr. Perry for years. But after Lily's disappearance, he had vanished too. There had been no record of where he went. No bank withdrawals, no purchases, nothing. It was like he had never existed. At first, the authorities weren't sure he was connected. There was no evidence. The truck had been a staple in Maplewood for over 2 decades. Parents trusted him. Kids ran to him. He had seemed harmless, just an old man making a living selling treats. But now Eleanor knew he had taken her daughter. And if he was still alive, he had to be found. 9. The camera that never stopped recording the days after Lily vanished. Eleanor had scoured every piece of evidence she could. She had replayed the Ring doorbell footage 1,000 times, hoping for something she had missed. The video was simple. It showed Lily walking out the front door, running toward the ice cream truck, her tiny body glowing in the golden sunset. It captured her reaching up to accept her cone. Then something strange. Lily turned her head sharply, as if someone had called her name. Her smile faltered. The camera glitched for a second, just a split frame of static. And when the image returned, the truck was driving away, and Lily was gone. There had been no proof of what happened in those lost seconds. Until now, because inside the truck, tucked under a pile of old receipts, Daniel had found something else. A small dash cam, one that had recorded everything. 10. The truth on tape. The police took the dash cam into evidence immediately. Eleanor and Daniel weren't allowed to see the footage right away. But when the lead detective came out of the station, his face was grave. He walked over to them slowly, as if he was carrying a terrible weight. "We need to talk," he said. Eleanor's throat tightened. "Did you see Lily?" The detective hesitated. Then he nodded. "Yes." Her breath hitched. "She was in the truck?" Another pause. Then, "She was in the truck." Eleanor clutched Daniel's arm, her knees threatening to give out. But was she? She was alive, the detective said quickly. At least for a while. The world blurred. She had been alive. For 6 years, Eleanor had imagined the worst. But now she had an answer, one that was both a relief and a nightmare. Daniel's voice was tight, with barely contained fury. Where's Perry? The detective's expression darkened. That's what we need to find out. 11 The Hunt Begins. The footage showed more than they expected. Lily had climbed into the truck willingly, led inside by someone she seemed to recognize. But it wasn't Perry. It was a younger man, someone they didn't know, someone who had been working with Perry. The footage cut out before they could see where Lily was taken next. But it was enough. It was a new lead, and now, after 6 years of silence, the case was reopened. Eleanor wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth, but she had to know. She had to find out what had happened to Lily, and if there was even the smallest chance her daughter was still out there, she would burn the world down to bring her home. The footage was grainy, old, distorted by time and static, but it was enough. Eleanor sat in the dimly lit police station, her stomach twisted into knots, her fingernails digging into her palms. Beside her, Daniel leaned forward, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscles twitch beneath his skin. Across the desk, Detective Morris tapped a few keys, and the video played. The screen flickered. Lily appeared. Eleanor's breath caught. Her daughter, her baby, stood at the edge of the ice cream truck, her tiny hands curled around the cone, her pink Hello Kitty nightgown swaying in the summer breeze. And then it happened. A figure stepped into frame. Not Mr. Perry. Someone younger. A man in his late 20s, wearing a dark hoodie. He crouched beside Lily, whispered something in her ear. Lily hesitated. Then, slowly, she climbed into the truck. The video glitched. When it returned, the man was in the driver's seat, and Lily was gone. 13, a ghost with no name. Eleanor's pulse pounded in her ears. Who is he? Daniel demanded, his voice barely controlled. Do you have a name? Detective Morris exhaled sharply. That's the problem, he said. We don't. Eleanor turned to him, eyes burning. What do you mean? He's right there. Morris rubbed a hand down his face. We ran facial recognition. No hits. No known aliases. No priors. He looked at them grimly. It's like he doesn't exist. 14, the man who vanished the next few days were chaos. The FBI was called in. The footage was enhanced, analyzed, torn apart frame by frame. Every missing person's database was scoured. But there was nothing on the man. No records. No background. It was like he had been erased. Or worse, like he had never been in the system at all. Eleanor refused to believe that. Someone had to know him. Someone had to have seen something. And if the police weren't going to find him fast enough, she would. 15, the cryptic message, the first breakthrough, came unexpectedly. Eleanor had just returned home from the station, emotionally drained, when she saw it. A manila envelope on her doorstep. No postage. No return address. Just her name. Her stomach twisted as she knelt down, fingers trembling as she tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. A picture of Lily, taken from behind. Her daughter was sitting on a bed, her head turned slightly toward the camera, her hair longer than Eleanor remembered. Too long. She had been alive long after she vanished. Eleanor's fingers clenched around the paper. There was writing on the back, for words, scrawled in red ink. You're looking in the wrong place. 16, the chase begins. Eleanor didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo, running 100 different possibilities through her head. Daniel paced beside her. Who the hell would leave this? How did they find our house? Eleanor didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing. Someone was watching them, and that meant they were close. She turned to Daniel, determination hardening her features. We need to go back to the truck. 17, the hidden compartment. It was well past midnight when they pulled up to the abandoned ice cream truck. The field was silent, the moon casting eerie shadows over the rusted metal. Eleanor's breath fogged in the cold air. Daniel grabbed a crowbar from the back of the car. Let's do this. They climbed into the truck, flashlights scanning the walls. The drawing still stared back at them, but now they were looking for something specific. The photo had been a message, a warning, but also a clue. Daniel started tapping the walls. "Help me look for anything loose." Eleanor ran her fingers along the rusted metal, her nails scraping against the surface. Then a hollow sound. She froze. "Here." Daniel rushed over, prying at the panel with the crowbar. The metal groaned, then popped loose. Behind it was a small, hidden compartment. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was an old notebook. Eleanor's stomach twisted as she pulled it out and flipped it open. Pages and pages of names. Dates. And in the margins, more drawings. Children, all crying. And one name, written over and over again. Lily. 18, the truth beneath the surface, the notebook, was evidence. Proof that Lily had been Perry's first victim. And possibly not his last. Daniel snapped photos of every page before they called Morris. When the detective arrived, his face was grim. This just turned into something bigger than we thought. He turned the notebook in his hands. "These aren't just random names." He pointed at a few of them. They match unsolved missing children's cases. Eleanor felt the air leave her lungs. Lily had been part of something far bigger. And now, so were they. Eleanor gripped the steering wheel, her hands clammy despite the cold air blasting from the car vents. Daniel sat beside her, the notebook resting on his lap. They had barely slept. The list of names inside that rusted ice cream truck was too long. Too many children, too many disappearances, too many families like theirs. And Lily's name had been in it, front and center. Daniel cleared his throat. Morris said he'd check into names, see if any cases connect. Eleanor nodded but said nothing. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something, that the answer was still buried somewhere in that truck. And she was right, because the next morning Morris called, and the first words out of his mouth were, "We found one of the names. He's dead." 20, the man in the basement. His name was Harold Kemp, 58. Lived alone in a rundown apartment. And 2 weeks ago, he had been found dead in his basement. Morris sighed through the phone. Medical examiner ruled it a suicide. Pills and alcohol. Eleanor's chest tightened. "But you don't think it was?" "No," Morris said flatly. "And here's why." There was writing on his walls, all over his basement, scrawled in black marker. I can still hear them. They never stopped screaming. She was the last one. Eleanor's stomach twisted. She didn't have to ask what it meant. Harold Kemp had known something, and now he was dead. 21, the stranger in the parking lot. Eleanor and Daniel drove to Harold's old apartment. The building was a crumbling relic, the kind of place where people minded their own business. No one answered when they knocked, but as they turned to leave, a voice stopped them. "You looking for Harold?" An old woman leaned against a railing on the second floor, a cigarette burning between her fingers. Eleanor and Daniel exchanged a glance. "Yes," Daniel said carefully. "Did you know him?" She scoffed. "Knew him well enough. Man was paranoid. Said people were watching him." Eleanor's heart pounded. "What kind of people?" The woman flicked ash onto the railing. "Didn't say. Just that they'd come for him soon." She gave them a hard look. "He wasn't lying." Eleanor frowned. "What do you mean?" The woman nodded toward the parking lot below. 2 nights before he died, some guy was sitting in a black car out there. Didn't move. Just watched his apartment. Daniel stiffened. "Did you get a good look at him?" "Didn't need to," the woman muttered, "because he came back the night Harold died." 22, the distorted voicemail. They left the apartment with more questions than answers. Who was watching Harold? Had he really killed himself? Or had someone silenced him before he could talk? Then Eleanor's phone rang. It was Detective Morris. His voice was clipped tense. "You need to hear something." There was a rustling sound, then a voicemail played. A distorted, static-filled voice whispered through the speaker. "She's still alive, but not for long." Eleanor's blood ran cold. Morris's voice returned. It was left on Harold's phone the night he died. Daniel clenched his fists. "Do we know who called?" "No caller ID. No trace." Eleanor swallowed. This wasn't just about Harold anymore. Someone out there still had Lily. And now, they knew Eleanor was looking. 23, the name that shouldn't exist back at home. Eleanor spread the notebook pages across the kitchen table, her eyes scanning the names. Daniel hovered beside her. What are we even looking for? Eleanor shook her head. I don't know. But something about the way Harold's name was written in the notebook bugged her. It wasn't like the others. It was underlined, twice, like a reminder or a warning. Then, at the bottom of the page, Eleanor saw something strange. A name, but it wasn't like the others. It was scribbled out, black ink slashed over it furiously. But part of it was still visible. J.M. Eleanor's stomach dropped. She knew that name. She had seen it before. And suddenly, she knew exactly where. 24, the school records. Eleanor ran to the closet, yanking out an old box of Lily's school paperwork. Daniel followed. What are you doing? She didn't answer. Not until she found it. An old school directory. Flipping through the pages, she stopped when she saw it. The same half-scribbled name from the notebook. James Monroe. Daniel frowned. Who is he? Eleanor's throat tightened. He was Lily's teacher. 25, the man who disappeared. Morris ran a check. James Monroe had been a substitute teacher at Lily's school for exactly 3 months. Then he vanished. No employment history after that. No trace of where he went. It was like he had ceased to exist. Eleanor sat back in her chair, heart pounding. Harold Kemp had known something. The mysterious man in the hoodie had taken Lily. And now, the one name that was furiously scribbled out in the notebook, it belonged to her daughter's former teacher. Daniel exhaled. What the hell is going on? Eleanor's hands clenched. We need to find him. And fast. Because a James Monroe was the key to Lily's disappearance. Someone had tried very hard to erase him from existence. And they might come for Eleanor and Daniel next. The house was silent, except for the steady tick of the clock. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, the notebook in front of her, her fingers tracing over the scribbled-out name, James Monroe. The name had been violently erased, as if someone had wanted to make sure it was never read. Daniel stood behind her, arms crossed. We need to know where he is now. Eleanor exhaled. If he's even still alive. Morris had already tried searching. No driver's license. No social security record. No known address. It was like James Monroe had been wiped from existence. Eleanor ran a hand through her hair, frustration boiling over. There has to be something we're missing. She flipped the pages back and forth, looking for a clue. Anything that connected him to Lily. Then she saw it. A tiny note written in faint pencil near the bottom of the page, almost invisible beneath the heavier ink. Red Creek. Her breath hitched. Daniel leaned in. What's that? Eleanor's pulse pounded. She knew exactly what Red Creek was, and it made her blood run cold. 27, the place where people disappear. Red Creek was a ghost town. Once a booming mining settlement, it had been abandoned for years, left to rot after the collapse of the industry. Now, it was nothing more than a collection of decaying buildings, hidden in the woods, far from civilization, the kind of place where no one could hear you scream. And James Monroe had written its name inside the notebook. Eleanor's voice was tight. What if that's where they took Lily? Daniel's jaw clenched. Then we're going. She hesitated. Morris said he'd check into Monroe's records again. Maybe we should. Daniel shook his head. We don't have time to wait. His eyes darkened. If Lily's still alive, she might not be for much longer. 28, the warning call they packed quickly. Flashlights, supplies, anything they might need. The drive to Red Creek would take 3 hours, and every second felt like a lifetime. As Eleanor threw a bag into the back seat, her phone rang. Morris. She answered on the first ring. Did you find something? His voice was tense. Where are you? Eleanor hesitated. Why? Because I found Monroe's last known address. And you're not going to like it. Eleanor swallowed hard. Where? Silence. Then, Red Creek. Her blood turned to ice. Eleanor, listen to me. If you're thinking about going there, we're already on our way. Morris cursed under his breath. Damn it. Turn around. Now. Eleanor tightened her grip on the phone. If Monroe is connected to Lily's disappearance, we need to find him. You don't get it, Morris said. I pulled up old police reports. He's not just some missing guy. He was a suspect in another case. Eleanor's breath hitched. What case? Morris's voice was grim. A child abduction. And the kid was never found. 29, the vanishing road. They should have turned back. But they didn't. Daniel gripped the wheel. His face set in stone as the road turned from pavement to gravel, winding deeper into the woods. Eleanor kept checking the map. No cell service. Her stomach twisted. They were completely cut off. The road narrowed. Then, the first sign of life. A car. Old. Rusted. Parked haphazardly on the side of the road, half swallowed by overgrown weeds. Daniel slowed. You think someone's here? Eleanor's gut told her yes. She scanned the trees, every shadow feeling like it was watching them. The feeling only got worse as they drove into the abandoned town. 30, the silent town Red Creek, was exactly how Eleanor remembered it. Empty buildings, collapsing structures, and an overwhelming silence. Daniel parked near what used to be a gas station. The windows were shattered, the sign hanging by a thread. Eleanor swallowed hard. Where do we start? Daniel motioned toward a building in the distance. The old schoolhouse. It was the only place still standing. And it looked wrong. The other buildings had decayed naturally, falling apart over time. But this one, it looked like someone had been keeping it intact. A single light flickered in the upstairs window. Daniel met her gaze. We're not alone. Eleanor's heart pounded. Then came the worst part. Because somewhere deep inside that building, she heard a child scream. The air inside the abandoned town was thick with decay. Dust settled in the empty streets, disturbed only by the crunch of Eleanor and Daniel's footsteps as they approached the old schoolhouse. It loomed over them, its frame creaking against the wind, the rotting wood swollen with time. But the most unnerving part was the light in the upstairs window, and the scream they had heard moments before. Eleanor's hands trembled as she gripped the flashlight. Was Lily in there? Daniel moved first, his jaw tight. Stay behind me. The front door hung slightly open, revealing an entrance coated in thick shadows. The floorboards groaned beneath their weight as they stepped inside. The schoolhouse smelled of mildew and damp wood, but there was something else, too. Something foul. A rotting stench. Eleanor swallowed hard. They had spent 6 years searching. 6 years wondering if Lily was out there. And now they were here. The place where all the answers might be. But something was very, very wrong. 32, the hidden door of the first floor was eerily untouched, as if frozen in time. Old wooden desks sat in rows, covered in a thick layer of dust. A chalkboard loomed at the front of the room, the faint outline of unfinished lessons still visible. But no signs of life. No signs of Lily. Daniel clenched his fists. The scream came from upstairs. They moved toward the staircase, but Eleanor hesitated. Something felt off. The dust on the stairs was undisturbed. No footprints. If someone had just screamed, they should have seen signs of movement. Then she noticed it. A rug, slightly crooked in the back of the room. Something beneath it. Daniel, wait. She stepped forward, heart racing, and yanked the rug back. A trapdoor. Fresh scratch marks lined the edges, like someone had tried to claw their way out. Daniel knelt beside her. Oh my God! A padlock held the door shut. A new padlock. Someone had been here recently. Eleanor's throat went dry. She's down there. Daniel pulled out his pocket knife, trying to force the lock open. Come on, come on. A noise echoed through the schoolhouse. A slow creak. The sound of a door opening upstairs. Then footsteps. Eleanor's stomach twisted. They weren't alone. 33, the man in the dark. Daniel froze, knife still wedged in the padlock. Eleanor's pulse hammered in her ears. Footsteps crept along the upstairs hallway. Measured. Slow. Whoever was up there wasn't rushing. They knew they had the upper hand. Daniel whispered, "We need to hurry." Eleanor scanned the room, searching for a weapon, anything to defend themselves. Then a voice, low, almost amused. I was wondering when you'd come." Eleanor stiffened. The voice was deep, gravelly, like it hadn't been used in years. And then a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. A man, tall, gaunt, his skin stretched thin over his sharp features. He was dressed in filthy clothes, his eyes sunken, but it was his expression that made Eleanor's breath catch. He was smiling. Daniel rose to his feet, blocking Eleanor from view. "Who the hell are you?" The man tilted his head, studying them like they were prey. Then he stepped forward. Eleanor's heart pounded. The way he moved, it was almost too controlled, like he had nothing to fear. Daniel stood his ground. "Where is she?" The man chuckled. "You already know," he murmured. Then, without warning, he lunged. 34. The struggled Daniel barely had time to react. The man crashed into him, slamming him into the old wooden desks. Eleanor screamed, backing away as the two men struggled. Daniel punched him, hard, but the man barely flinched. He was strong, too strong. Eleanor grabbed the nearest object, a rusted metal chair, and swung it at the man's back. The impact made him stagger, but he didn't go down. Instead, he whipped around, his bloodshot eyes locking onto Eleanor. She froze, and in that moment, he smiled again. Then Daniel drove his knife into the man's side. A wet gasp. The man stumbled, eyes going wide as blood bloomed through his shirt. For a moment, everything was still. Then he fell. The impact shook the floorboards, dust rising in the dim light. Daniel's chest heaved as he pulled the knife free, his hands shaking. Eleanor couldn't move. They had won. But there was no time to celebrate, because beneath them, from the trapdoor, came another faint, desperate sound. A child's whimper. 35. The door opens. Daniel didn't hesitate. He pried the bloodied key from a man's pocket and unlocked the padlock in a single, swift motion. Eleanor helped him yank open the trapdoor. The smell hit them instantly. Damp, rot, old sweat. A dark, narrow staircase led down into the ground. Eleanor grabbed a flashlight, her hands shaking as she aimed it into the blackness below. Her heart stopped. A small figure sat huddled in the corner of a filthy room. Skin pale, hair long, tangled. The girl flinched at the light, raising frail hands to shield her face. Eleanor's throat tightened. It had been 6 years, but she would recognize that face anywhere. Tears welled in her eyes as she dropped to her knees. "Lily?" The girl lifted her head, her eyes wide with fear. And then recognition. Her lips parted. A whisper. "Mommy?" Eleanor sobbed. She reached for her daughter, pulling her into her arms, her body racking with tears. Daniel let out a choked breath, his fingers gripping the doorway like he was afraid this moment would vanish. "We found you," Eleanor whispered against Lily's hair. "We found you." But as Daniel turned, scanning the shadows one last time, his stomach dropped, because carved into the wall, deep into the rotting wood, were words scratched in frantic desperation. A warning. He said, "I'm not the only one." Eleanor clutched Lily to her chest, her body trembling. Daniel hovered protectively over them, his knife still slick with the blood of the man who had attacked them. The room was suffocating in its silence, except for Lily's soft, ragged breathing. Daniel turned toward the trapdoor. "We need to get out of here now." But then a creak, not from beneath them, from above. Eleanor's breath hitched. More footsteps, heavy ones. Daniel swore under his breath. He wasn't alone. The realization hit Eleanor like ice water. The message scratched into the wall. He said, "I'm not the only one." If that man hadn't been working alone, who else was here? Lily whimpered, curling against Eleanor's side. "We'll keep you safe, baby," Eleanor whispered. "I promise." Daniel clenched his jaw, his grip tightening around the knife. He turned back to the narrow staircase leading up, the only way out, and someone was waiting for them. 37, a deadly chase. Daniel moved first. Silent, calculated. He reached the top of the stairs and peeked out into the classroom. Nothing. For a moment, Eleanor thought maybe, just maybe, they had imagined it. But then the front door to the schoolhouse slammed shut. A trap. Daniel grabbed Eleanor's hand. "Run," They burst out of the trapdoor. Lily held tight against Eleanor's chest. The schoolhouse was eerily quiet. Too quiet. Daniel's eyes darted around. Whoever it is, they're waiting for us. Eleanor swallowed. So what do we do? Daniel glanced down at Lily, who was shivering in her mother's arms. Terrified, we go through them. He moved first, leading the way toward the front door. The handle was ice cold under his fingers. A single moment of hesitation. Then he threw it open. The second they stepped outside, the night air ripped through them. But the second thing they noticed was far worse. A second truck, parked behind theirs. Still running. Headlights cutting through the darkness. Waiting. A tall figure leaned against the hood, arms crossed. His face was hidden in the shadows, but Eleanor could feel his eyes on them. Daniel stepped forward, knife raised. Who the hell are you? The man exhaled a slow laugh. Then he moved forward, just enough of the light to catch his face. And Eleanor's blood ran cold, because she knew that face. She had seen it before, 6 years ago, in a police sketch. 38, the man in the sketch, Eleanor couldn't breathe. She remembered the night Lily disappeared, as if it had happened yesterday. The last time anyone had seen her daughter, she had been holding an ice cream cone, and security cameras had caught a glimpse of a man standing by a truck just before Lily was gone. The image had been blurred, unclear, but this man, she recognized him instantly. You, she whispered. The man grinned. Took you long enough. Daniel lunged, but before he could reach him, the man pulled a gun. Aha, he said, aiming it straight at Daniel's chest. Wouldn't want to make your daughter an orphan, would you? Eleanor froze. Daniel gritted his teeth, fists clenched at his sides. He was calculating, waiting for an opening. But Eleanor could feel the shift in the air. This man, whoever he was, wasn't afraid, because he thought he had already won. 39. The last stand, Lily buried her face against Eleanor's shoulder, trembling. Eleanor's heart pounded. You took her. The man smirked. I did. His voice was casual, like he was talking about taking a toy from a store shelf. Eleanor's stomach twisted. He tilted his head. And I could take her again. Rage flashed through Eleanor. Daniel moved. It happened in a blur. Daniel duffed the man's arm, grabbing his wrist before he could fire. The gun went off. A loud crack shattered the silence. The bullet missed. Daniel slammed the man into the truck, twisting his arm, forcing the gun away. The man let out a sharp grunt, but he was fast. He twisted free, elbowed Daniel in the ribs, and grabbed the gun again. Eleanor's breath caught. The man aimed. Another shot. Daniel dropped to the ground. Eleanor screamed. But the bullet had missed again. Daniel was already moving. Before the man could react, Daniel swung his knife. Deep, precise. The blade sank into the man's stomach. A sharp, guttural gasp. His body stiffened. He staggered back, hands grasping at the wound, eyes wide with shock. Then he collapsed. Blood pooled beneath him. His fingers twitched, then stilled. Eleanor's breath came ragged. Lily whimpered against her chest. Daniel stood over the man's body, knife still clenched in his hand. His chest heaved. It was over. It had to be over. But then, Daniel turned toward the truck, and his stomach dropped, because in the back seat, there was another child. The world stood still. Daniel's breathing was heavy, his pulse pounding in his ears. The bloodied knife in his hand felt heavier now as he stared at the back seat of the abandoned truck. A child. She was young, no older than Lily had been when she vanished. Maybe 5 or 6. Her dark eyes were wide with fear, her small hands clutching a stuffed bear so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Eleanor gasped, holding Lily even closer. Daniel stepped forward carefully, not wanting to frighten the girl. Hey, he said, voice steady but gentle. It's okay now. You're safe. The little girl didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. She just sat there, motionless. Daniel exchanged a glance with Eleanor. His wife's face was pale, exhaustion weighing down her features. But there was something else in her expression, recognition. Eleanor took a step closer. I know her, she whispered. Daniel's pulse quickened. What? Eleanor swallowed hard. Her name is Sophie Langley. The name hit Daniel like a brick. Langley, as in Senator David Langley. Daniel had seen the news reports. A high-profile case. Sophie had been taken from her own backyard 3 years ago in broad daylight. The city had been flooded with search teams, helicopters, Amber Alerts flashing on every highway. But she had vanished, just like Lily. And now, here she was, sitting in the back of a truck belonging to the same men who had stolen their daughter. 41. The nightmares reach Eleanor slowly reached for the truck door handle and pulled it open. It gave a loud creak, but Sophie didn't flinch. She just sat there, silent. Eleanor crouched down. Sweetheart, she whispered. My name is Eleanor. We're going to help you, okay? Sophie still didn't react. Her small fingers twitched, tightening around the stuffed bear, but her expression remained eerily blank. Daniel swallowed. She looked hollow, like she had been locked in the dark for too long, just like Lily had been, his hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just about his daughter. How many other children had these monsters taken? How many more were out there? Daniel turned toward the trees, scanning the forest like something or someone else might still be hiding. His gut twisted. What if this wasn't over? 42, a long-awaited call, Eleanor carefully reached out to Sophie, brushing the girl's knotted hair from her face. We need to get her to a hospital, she murmured. She's in shock. Daniel nodded, stepping back and pulled his phone from his pocket. His fingers shook as he dialed. The line rang once. Then, 911, what's your emergency? Daniel exhaled a shaky breath. This is Daniel Carter, he said. I need officers sent to the old Westlake schoolhouse. Now. The dispatcher's voice changed instantly. Sir, did you say Daniel Carter? A pause. Are you reporting a missing child? Daniel's grip on the phone tightened. I'm reporting a found child, he corrected. 2, actually. His voice wavered as he looked at Eleanor cradling Lily. One of them is my daughter. The dispatcher sucked in a breath. A name like Lily Carter had been burned into the minds of law enforcement for years. Sending units now. Daniel lowered the phone, his heart hammering. It was really happening. The nightmare was ending. 43 sirens in the distance, it felt like forever. The wait. The distant sound of sirens growing louder. Daniel stood guard near the bodies of the men who had taken his daughter. He refused to take his eyes off of them, as if any second they might come back to life. Eleanor sat on the ground, holding both Lily and Sophie in her arms. Lily clung to her mother, but Sophie, she just stared into the woods, like she was still trapped somewhere else. Then, flashing lights. The sound of tires crunching against the dirt road. Doors slamming open. Officers poured from their cars, weapons raised, scanning the scene. A moment later, a paramedic rushed forward, kneeling beside Eleanor and the girls. One officer approached Daniel. His face was familiar. Detective Paul Grayson. He had worked Lily's case 6 years ago. Now, he looked at Daniel like he had just seen a ghost. My God, Grayson breathed. His eyes darted to Eleanor and Lily. Is that... Daniel nodded, his throat tight. Grayson ran a hand over his face. We thought she was gone. His voice cracked. We thought she was... dead. Daniel finished for him. The word hung in the air. But Lily wasn't dead. She was right here, breathing, alive. And now, they had another child saved. Daniel swallowed hard, looking toward the trees. How many more were still out there? 44, the truth uncovered hours passed in a blur of flashing lights and voices. Paramedics checked the girls. Detectives flooded the area, collecting evidence from the schoolhouse. And Daniel and Eleanor, they didn't let go of their daughter. Lily wouldn't speak much. She kept burying her face in Eleanor's shoulder, avoiding the officer's questions. But Sophie, she still hadn't said a single word. A child psychologist had been called in, but it was clear it was going to take time. Time to undo what had been done to them. Then Detective Grayson returned. His expression was grim. We ran the plates on the truck, he said, and we searched the schoolhouse. Daniel braced himself. There's evidence. Grayson continued, voice tight, that other children have been held here before. Eleanor's grip on Lily tightened. Grayson sighed. But that's not the worst part. He met Daniel's eyes. The men you killed, they weren't working alone. A sharp chill ran through Daniel's spine. Not alone. The scratched message on the wall came back to him. He said, I'm not the only one. There were others, still out there, still taking children. Lily may have been home. Sophie may have been found. But this wasn't over. Not even close. The front door creaked open. Daniel hesitated, stepping into the house for the first time in 6 years with Lily in his arms. Eleanor followed, her fingers trembling as she flicked on the light. The house looked exactly the same. The framed pictures on the walls, the worn couch, the faint scent of Eleanor's lavender candles. It was like time had stood still, except it hadn't. Lily wasn't the same. Daniel wasn't the same. And there were shadows now, memories that would never fully go away. Lily's fingers clutched at his shirt, her small body still stiff with unease. She had barely spoken a word since they left the hospital. Daniel swallowed hard and carried her to the couch. Here we are, sweetheart, he whispered. Lily glanced around, eyes flicking to the family photos on the mantel. She didn't recognize them. Daniel's chest tightened. How much of her childhood had been stolen? Eleanor knelt beside them, brushing Lily's hair behind her ear. We're home, baby, she said softly. You're safe. Lily didn't answer. She just curled up tighter in Daniel's arms, her gaze darting toward the windows, as if she was still waiting for the monsters to come back. 46, the haunting silence of days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Lily barely spoke. She barely moved. She refused to sleep alone, terrified of the dark, terrified of closed doors. Eleanor tried to get her to eat her favorite foods, but Lily didn't seem to remember what she had liked. It was like she had been ripped from time, frozen in the nightmare she had lived for 6 years. Daniel stayed awake every night, listening to the sound of her breathing, and every night she woke up screaming. It was the worst kind of torture, knowing it got on her back, but still feeling like he was losing her. He had killed the men who took her, but he couldn't kill the scars they had left. 47, the ongoing war the media swarmed. Lily's face was on every news station. Sophie Langley's parents sobbed in interviews, thanking the Carters for their survival. And the police? They confirmed it. The Westlake schoolhouse was one of many locations tied to a larger child trafficking ring. Dozens of children had been taken, and the men Daniel had killed, they were just soldiers. The real masterminds were still out there, still taking children. Daniel stared at the news report on the TV, his jaw tightening. The footage switched to a blurred-out image. More evidence found in the schoolhouse. A list. Names. A network spanning across the country. Daniel gripped the arm of the couch. For 6 years, he had thought his battle was about getting Lily back. Now he realized it wasn't just about her. There were more victims. More parents who had been left shattered. More children still trapped in the same horror Lily had lived through. And as long as those monsters still breathed, Daniel would never stop. 48, a father's promise that night. Daniel sat on the edge of Lily's bed, watching her as she slept. Her small fingers clutched the blanket, her expression peaceful. For now, Daniel reached out, brushing his hand gently over her hair. I'm never letting them take you again, he whispered. His daughter had been stolen. His fight wasn't over. Lily stirred slightly but didn't wake. Daniel leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Then, with a deep breath, he stood up and walked toward the gun safe in the closet. 49, the end, for now. The last shot fades to black as Daniel locks and loads a handgun, his face set with determination. His daughter was home, but there were others still missing. And if the police couldn't stop these men,